Okay, take a look at this. Here's how popular Among Us was in May, June, July, then here's August, and boom, September, October, November. It's safe to say the game is popular right now, but with popularity comes inspiration, so today we're taking a look at 10 games that ripped off Among Us. And if you don't hit the like button and subscribe right now, you'll only be able to play the Roblox version of Among Us. I wouldn't risk it. Coming in at number 10, we have the Among Us version in China. So because of the way that games are released in China, most players didn't know that Among Us isn't actually available in the country. So of course, Chinese developers rushed to make their own version of Among Us, and it has led to our first ripoff. This is called Werewolf Among Us, and it's one of the most downloaded games on iOS in China. It even has more downloads than China's version of PUBG in just a week. I mean, if that doesn't show just how many people are aching to get their hands on Among Us, I don't know what does. Werewolf Among Us pretty much has the exact same map and game mechanics of the original game, except there's one major difference. Instead of a spaceship with an eerie soundtrack, Werewolf Among Us decided to go for more of a cheerful setting, with the skeld actually being redesigned into a medieval castle. Even the tasks are medieval themed, like rebuilding stone walls and stroking this kind of creepy looking cat. Also, as you can tell from the name, it's a werewolf instead of an imposter, so I guess I would probably check this game out. But now we move on to our next ripoff with number 9, The Imposter Inside Us. So this next Among Us clone is nowhere near as high quality as a Chinese knockoff, because this is kind of just a regular old money grab. I mean, just from a first look at the Steam page, you could tell this is really poorly designed. It's called Imposter Inside Us, a very on-the-nose name that just screams I want money. For some reason, the imposters are just called Murder, and the crewmates, well, are called Peepel? Why is it spelled like that? It doesn't help that every other word in this game is spelled wrong, and it looks like it was made in 5 seconds. But hey, it's not the only poorly designed Among Us ripoff, because now we're moving on to number 8, Murder Us. So we had a complete ripoff over on Steam, but for the mobile players, well, turns out you have your own knockoff too. Over on the Play Store, the home of stolen games apparently, there is a pretty popular app that's gaining traction called Murder Us. Like the last one, it just feels terribly designed and a complete money grab. I'm not gonna lie though, it is a little bit better than the last one, but not by a lot. Here's where things get crazy. This app has over 1 million downloads. It's just like Among Us, but if you downloaded kind of like a potato graphics mod, but hey, enough ripping on this one, because there's actually some insanely cool Among Us clones out there and look kind of fun. Let's start off with number 7, 3D Among Us. So a YouTuber by the name of Danny is a game developer who actually took on the challenge of making Among Us, but in 3D. He got to work on actually making a fully functioning recreation of Polis along with his own version of the UI. There's also working replica tasks of the original map, actual sabotaging, and he took it one step further. There's even a working version of cams where you can go up to the thing and look at the screen. I gotta admit, it's pretty cool and well made. Mr. Beast even played it with Jacksepticeye and Laserbeam, just showing off how fun this game could get, but Danny isn't the only person to have an attempt at making Among Us in 3D, because you gotta check out number 6, Among Us Remade in Unreal Engine 4. So while Danny's version was super true to the original game, it definitely didn't scream good graphics, and that's what this next Among Us clone tried to do. A YouTuber named Fat Dino went into Unreal Engine 4 and tried to make a photorealistic version of Among Us, and it's kind of terrifying. He designed the astronauts so they look like real spacemen, and then recreated the skeld, but as some kind of futuristic sci-fi map rather than a cartoony spaceship. And to be fair, if Among Us was real life, this is probably what the skeld would look like. After setting up multiplayer, Fat Dino then hosted a match, and honestly, it does look really fun. I mean, the detail on the map itself is insane, and he has recreations of almost all the tasks in that HD glory. I mean, even the card swipe looks incredible. The security cameras also work and have a really nice effect on them. I guess I'm just a little disappointed that we can't download and play this ourselves because, I mean, who doesn't want to play a game where ejecting a crewmate looks like this? Either way, Fat Dino, you are super talented. I really want to play it. Hook me up, man. But for those of you who like to keep it simple, wait until you hear about number 5, Among Us in Roblox. There are actually a ton of Among Us ripoffs on Roblox, just like there is for, well, like every other game on here. But while some of them are just people trying to get clout, there are some solid knockoffs out there. One of the clones is called Amongst Us, and it's a genuine attempt at recreating the entire game in Roblox. In fact, up until now, it's probably one of the most accurate of the knockoffs. It looks exactly like a game of Among Us, down to the small details. The tasks do look kind of the same, and even the voting screen looks really well made. I mean, a lot of you might groan and go, yeah, but it's Roblox, but I gotta admit, it's a pretty high quality map. Well, except for the fact that the icons of the crewmates are from Scribblenauts, but aside from that, it really is genuinely well made. Although seeing Among Us in Roblox isn't that surprising, but I could definitely show you something that nobody was expecting. Introducing number 4, Among Us on Game Boy. Yeah, while a lot of people out here are trying to recreate Among Us on the biggest platforms like Steam, the Play Store, Unreal Engine, I mean even Roblox, there's no denying that going back in time is a fun idea. And that is why a game developer on itch.io actually took the time to make a fully functioning version of Among Us on Game Boy. Technically, you could also play it in a web browser, but there's also support for you to download this thing and put it on your actual Game Boy. It's not just any old port either, because this version of the game is fully made with pixel art and looks kinda high quality. Now it is in Spanish, so it's kinda hard to tell what's going on, but you roam around the Skeld talking to other teammates like it's some kind of RPG. Unfortunately, it's still in development, so only half of the map has been made, but from what I could understand of the Spanish, you could talk to people in places like Medbay and even scan. If you don't scan, they call you an imposter or something, but don't really do anything about it. I mean, it would be nice if there were actual tasks to do, but hey, you can't really complain because it looks awesome anyway. But from 2D to 3D, let's move on to number 3, Tanfer's Among Us 3D. So the 3D knockoffs don't stop there because a streamer took a shot at making Among Us in 3D. But there's a catch. They only gave themselves 48 hours to do it, which makes it all the more interesting, and they streamed the whole thing on Twitch. Of course, because this was made in like 48 hours, Tanfer didn't have much time to actually model everything, so instead some parts of this game have screenshots from the actual Among Us map. Kinda like the wiring task here, where you could just see the background straight up ripped from the game. But what makes this version better than all other 3D remakes though? Turns out you could jump on each other's heads, and I mean, yes, that's hilarious, but aside from that, you could actually download this one and play it with your friends. It's over on itch.io for free right now, and you can boot it up and get a bunch of friends together. You could also play with randoms, but I think it'll be hard to get a full lobby considering it's just a knockoff. And now let's start to look at the final Among Us clones in the list, beginning with number 2, the Among Us in Fortnite. Fortnite Creative has come a long way from when it first launched, and people have made some incredible levels and creations. I mean, you wouldn't believe the kind of stuff you could do with Fortnite, but maybe this Among Us clone might convince you. A map made by KK Slider has been gaining a ton of popularity because it's a really well-made version of Among Us. There's a working mini-map, event system for imposters to walk through, and even something original to this game mode. You all might love the idea of this or hate it, but there's a scanner on the map where it tells you if someone is an imposter or not. Kinda like the one from Trouble in Terrace Town, if any of you remember that. Although this map definitely has a one-up over the actual game, because ejecting someone from the ship, well, it looks like this. Yeah, and also you have to shoot the person you vote for, which just makes it hurt even more when you get falsely accused by your friends. I'll throw up the map code on screen so you can all check it out, but that leads us to our final Among Us knockoff, which is probably also the most popular one. Let's finish off with number 1, Among Us in Virtual Reality. If there's one game mode that is absolutely perfect for VR chat, it's Among Us. Which is why a developer actually made their own custom game mode for VR chat last month, and it has one of the best recreations of the Skeld I've ever seen. It has proximity chat, actual working tasks, a really neat vent system where you can stalk crewmates from above. I mean, the pros just don't end. Basically what I'm trying to say is if you have a VR headset that you want to dust off, you have to go and play this. It's in VR chat, so it's technically free, and even people who don't have VR headsets can still play it. So while Among Us ripoffs can be truly terrible and have half of the features spelt wrong, this is a good way to show that not every clone is a bad thing. But hey, click on screen right now to check out this awesome video. This has been Tommy, and you're watching T5G.